Imagine standing in mission control, headphones on, eyes fixed on a screen, and then nothing. The signal is gone. Somewhere out there, more than 12 billion miles from Earth, a spacecraft the size of a small car has gone silent. Not because it exploded, not because it was hit by something, because of a 2-degree mistake. 2 degrees, the width of your thumbnail held at arm's length against the night sky. That tiny angular slip was enough to sever humanity's connection with the most distant, active probe we had ever sent into the cosmos. And for the next 2 weeks, the engineers at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory had no way of knowing whether they would ever hear from it again. This is the story of Voyager 2, a spacecraft launched in 1977 built for a 4-year mission to Jupiter and Saturn, which somehow found itself still flying, still transmitting, still doing science nearly 5 decades later, deep inside interstellar space. It is a story about the fragility of connection across unimaginable distances, about the ingenuity of the people who refused to give up, and about what the probe found when it came back online, discoveries that quietly changed the way we understand the very edge of the world our sun created. To appreciate what happened in the summer of 2023, you first need to understand where Voyager 2 actually is. Most people know it's far away, but the numbers are so large they tend to slide off the brain without leaving a mark. So let's try to make them real. Light, the fastest thing in the universe, travels at about 186,000 miles per second. It takes that light just over 8 minutes to travel from the Sun to Earth. It takes about 43 minutes to reach Jupiter, a little over an hour to get to Saturn. But to reach Voyager 2 at the time of the incident in July 2023, a beam of light would need to travel for more than 18.5 hours. That is how far this spacecraft had gone, 12.3 billion miles from Earth, a distance so enormous that even the speed of light seems modest against it. Voyager 2 was launched on August 20th, 1977. 16 days before its twin, Voyager 1, in a deliberate sequence designed around a rare alignment of the outer planets. This alignment, which happens only once every 176 years, allowed a single spacecraft to use the gravity of each giant planet like a slingshot, picking up speed and redirecting itself toward the next target on the itinerary. Voyager 2 flew past Jupiter in 1979, capturing the first detailed images of its volcanic moon, Io, and discovering active geysers that reshaped our understanding of what a moon could be. Then on to Saturn in 1981, where its cameras revealed the staggering complexity of the ring system in never-before-seen detail. And unlike its twin, Voyager 2 kept going further into the outer solar system, swinging past Uranus in 1986 and Neptune in 1989. To this day, those remain the only close-up visits humanity has ever made to those 2 distant ice giant worlds. After Neptune, Voyager 2 had no more planetary targets. It simply kept flying out and out into the darkness beyond the known solar system. For decades, engineers at JPL watched the numbers tick upward, the distance growing, the signal growing ever fainter, the spacecraft powered not by solar panels, those would be useless so far from the sun, but by 3 small nuclear generators that convert the heat of decaying plutonium-238 into electricity. When Voyager 2 launched, those generators produced around 470 watts of power, about enough to run a few modern light bulbs. Over time, as the plutonium steadily decays, the power output shrinks by roughly 4 watts every year. By the time of the crisis, the probe was running on a fraction of its original electrical budget, with instruments being carefully managed and some already switched off to conserve what little remained. Then came July 21st, 2023. Mission controllers sent a sequence of planned commands to the spacecraft, a standard software uplink, the kind of routine operation the team had performed countless times. But something went wrong. Inadvertently, the wrong version of the command was transmitted. The result was catastrophic in its simplicity. Voyager 2's high-gain antenna, a dish roughly 12 feet across that serves as the spacecraft's only means of sending data back to Earth and receiving instructions from home, tilted just 2 degrees off its intended orientation. 2 degrees away from pointing at our planet, that was all it took. The data stream went dark, the telemetry vanished. Voyager 2 was no longer listening, and it was no longer talking. Somewhere beyond the edge of our solar system, the most far-flung machine humanity had ever built was flying blind and alone. The silence at JPL was unlike anything the team had experienced in Voyager's long history. This was not a planned communications gap. There was no scheduled maintenance window, no deliberate pause. This was a loss of contact with a spacecraft that, once gone, could never be replaced. There is no repair mission possible for Voyager 2. No astronaut could travel to it. No backup probe sat ready to take its place. It is one of a kind, and it was drifting through interstellar space with its ear turned away from home. Engineers quickly assessed the situation. They knew one thing that offered a sliver of hope. Voyager 2 is programmed to automatically reset its orientation several times per year, turning its antenna back toward Earth as a safeguard against exactly this kind of scenario. The next scheduled reset was set for October 15th, nearly 3 months away. 3 months of silence was deeply unsettling, but at least there was a backup. The question was whether they could do better, whether they could somehow reach the spacecraft before October, despite the fact that its antenna was pointing the wrong direction and would barely even receive a signal, let alone a clear command. On August 1st, engineers used multiple antennas from the Deep Space Network, the global array of giant radio dishes that serves as humanity's communication link with its spacecraft, to listen very carefully for any trace of Voyager 2. And they found something, not data, not telemetry, but a carrier signal, the faint electromagnetic heartbeat the spacecraft broadcasts, whether or not it is sending any information. It was too weak to extract any data from, but it confirmed the most essential fact. Voyager 2 was still alive. It was still out there. It was still flying. What came next was one of the most remarkable acts of interstellar communication ever attempted. The team decided to try something that had never been done quite this way before. They would use the Deep Space Network's most powerful antenna, the 70-meter dish at the Canberra station in Australia, capable of transmitting at 100 kilowatts, to essentially shout across 12 billion miles of empty space. They would send a command signal so powerful that even a slightly misaligned antenna might pick it up. And that command would instruct Voyager 2 to do one specific thing: reorient itself. Turn the dish back toward home. The command was sent on August 2nd, and then came the wait. 18 and a half hours for the signal to travel from Earth to Voyager 2 at the speed of light, and then another 18 and a half hours for any response to make the same journey in reverse. 37 hours of uncertainty, during which the team could only watch the clock and hope that a signal fired into the dark had found its mark. At 12:29 in the morning on August 4th, 2023, science and telemetry data began streaming in. The interstellar shout had worked. Voyager 2 had heard the command, executed it perfectly, and swung its antenna back toward Earth. The data it sent confirmed something engineers desperately needed to know. The spacecraft was healthy. It was operating normally. It was on its expected trajectory, and it was ready to keep doing science. The relief at JPL was immense. But what mattered most, beyond the engineering triumph, was what Voyager 2 was still out there to tell us. Because in the years before the silence, and in the months after contact was restored, this aged and power-diminished spacecraft was sending back information that no other machine in history has ever been able to provide. Voyager 2 crossed a boundary on November 5th, 2018, that only one spacecraft had ever crossed before it. That boundary is called the heliopause, and understanding what it is helps explain why crossing it matters so much. The sun doesn't just produce light and warmth. It constantly breathes out a stream of charged particles, electrons, protons, helium nuclei, traveling outward in all directions at hundreds of miles per second. This is the solar wind, and it doesn't stop at the orbit of Earth, or Jupiter, or even Neptune. It keeps going, pushing outward against the interstellar medium, the thin gas and magnetic fields that fill the space between the stars. Eventually, far enough from the sun, the solar wind runs out of strength. It slows, it heats up, it gets compressed. And at a certain point, it stops altogether, replaced by the colder, denser material of the galaxy itself. That transition zone, that cosmic shoreline between the sun's domain and the wider universe, is the heliopause. And Voyager 2 crossed it, becoming only the second human-made object ever to enter true interstellar space. But what made Voyager 2's crossing especially scientifically valuable was something it had that Voyager 1 lacked. By the time Voyager 1 crossed the heliopause in 2012, its plasma science instrument, the tool that directly measures the charged particles flowing around the spacecraft, had long since stopped functioning. Voyager 2 still had a working plasma instrument. This meant that, for the first time, scientists could get direct, in-situ measurements of what it actually feels like to pass through the heliopause, rather than inferring it from other instruments. And what they found was striking in several ways. The heliopause, it turned out, was not the gradual fade scientists had expected. It was sharper, more abrupt. The transition from the solar wind to interstellar plasma happened in less than a single day, as Voyager 2 measured it. Within that boundary layer, the plasma slowed dramatically, heated up, and increased in density. Immediately beyond the boundary, the interstellar medium was found to be hotter than models had predicted. The heliosphere's hull, to use an analogy, appeared slightly porous. A trickle of solar particles was found to be leaking outward through the boundary, and perhaps most strikingly, the magnetic field just beyond the heliopause was found to be aligned parallel to the magnetic field inside it. That was not what many scientists had expected. The geometry of interstellar space at our doorstep appeared to be organized in a way that earlier models hadn't fully accounted for. Then there was a deeper puzzle. Voyager 1 had crossed the heliopause during a period of high solar activity. Voyager 2 crossed during a period of low solar activity. Scientists expected this difference to show up clearly in where the two probes encountered the boundary. A more active sun should push the heliopause further out, like a lung expanding. With a deep breath. But both probes crossed the heliopause at roughly similar distances from the sun. Why the boundary appeared to hold its position despite the sun's changing activity remains one of the open questions the Voyager data has raised rather than answered. As more recent research published in 2024 began to suggest, the heliopause may not be a simple thin membrane at all, but rather a thick, complex boundary region, a zone of transition rather than a clean line, where the magnetic fields of the heliosphere and the interstellar medium interact in ways that are still being worked out. Voyager 2 is currently, as of the latest measurements, traveling at a heliocentric distance of roughly 143 astronomical units from the Sun, or about 13 billion miles from Earth. It is not yet in pristine interstellar space by the strictest scientific definition. The region it now occupies is what researchers call the very local interstellar medium, the portion of the galaxy's material that has been compressed and perturbed by the presence of our own heliosphere. To reach truly undisturbed interstellar space, Voyager 2 would need to travel several hundred astronomical units further still. It may not have the power to make that journey while returning data, but what it can see from where it sits is already reshaping how we think about our place in the galaxy. And then, in November of 2024, something unexpected happened. Scientists announced they had gone back to Voyager 2's oldest data, not from its years in interstellar space, but from its brief flyby of Uranus in 1986, and found that decades of planetary science had been built on a cosmic accident. When Voyager 2 passed Uranus, it observed a magnetosphere behaving so strangely that Uranus was labeled an outlier, an oddball world unlike any other planet in the solar system. The energized particles surrounding the planet defied all understanding of how magnetic fields should trap radiation. For nearly 4 decades, that mystery went unsolved. New research published in Nature Astronomy in November 2024 revealed the truth. In the days just before Voyager 2 arrived at Uranus, an unusual solar wind event had compressed the planet's magnetosphere, squashing it dramatically. Voyager 2 had caught Uranus in an anomalous state that only occurs roughly 4% of the time. As the lead researcher from JPL put it, if the spacecraft had arrived just a few days earlier, it would have seen an entirely different planet. The strangeness that defined Uranus in textbooks for a generation wasn't Uranus at all. It was a snapshot of bad timing. And this realization opened up another possibility. The 5 major moons of Uranus, which had appeared strangely depleted of certain plasma, might actually be geologically active after all. With the solar wind event now explaining where that plasma went, scientists could reimagine the moons not as dead, frozen worlds, but as potentially dynamic ones, a finding that strengthens the scientific case for a future dedicated Uranus mission, which the latest planetary science decadal survey has already prioritized. All of this science, decades old and brand new, is being squeezed out of a spacecraft with less electrical power than a conventional refrigerator light bulb. As of early 2025, NASA made the difficult but necessary decision to shut off additional instruments on both Voyager probes to extend the missions as long as possible. Voyager 2's low-energy charged particle instrument, a tool designed to study ions, electrons, and cosmic rays, was powered down in March 2025. Its cosmic ray subsystem is planned to follow in 2026. Voyager 1 has faced similar losses. The team believes that with careful management, at least one science instrument on each spacecraft could remain operational into the 2030s. But they are under no illusions. These are 47-year-old machines built with 1970s technology, flying in an environment no engineer of that era could have fully anticipated, and every year that passes is borrowed time. There is something almost unbearably poignant about this. Voyager 2 carries, like its twin, a golden record. A gold-plated copper disc containing sounds and images of Earth, greetings in dozens of languages, music ranging from Bach to Chuck Berry, the sounds of rain and surf and wind and heartbeat. It was placed there as a message in a bottle, on the off chance that something intelligent might one day find it among the stars. The probe has no idea it carries this message. It has no idea it was ever lost. It cannot feel the relief that swept through Canberra and Pasadena when, at 12:29 in the morning on a Friday in August, the signal came home. But we felt it. We felt all of it. The dread of silence, the desperation of the shout across the void, the relief of the answer. And then, because science does not stop at the moment of relief, we kept listening. And in the data that poured back from a machine launched when the world was a different place, we found answers we had not known we needed. About the edge of our sun's reach, about the true nature of a planet we thought we understood, about a boundary between us and the galaxy that is stranger and richer and more complex than anyone imagined. Voyager 2 is still out there right now, crossing territory that no map has ever charted, measuring a universe that stretches beyond all human intuition, growing quieter with every passing year as the plutonium cools and the watts dwindle. One day, perhaps in this decade, perhaps in the next, the last, instrument will go dark. The signal will fade for good. And Voyager 2 will continue on in silence, carrying its golden record through interstellar space for millions of years to come, long after everything that launched it has turned to dust. The question it leaves behind is not a small one. If 2 degrees of misalignment nearly cost us all of this science, all of this wonder, what else are we on the verge of losing before we fully understand it? And what else might still be hiding in the data of a mission we almost gave up for dead?